Up? Hello. Very excited to talk about this list because it's been like one of the most fun lists I've played in Lorcana. It's probably quite popular. You all know Amber Steel Aggro and like what it's doing. It's pretty much everywhere and it's doing very well. If you've gone to your locals, there's probably someone playing it right now. But yeah, this has been probably the most fun list I've played. It's playing close to the kind of deck design that I really like in card games, and of course, others can disagree. It plays almost close to a zoo deck, which for anyone out there who doesn't know what a zoo deck is, zoo decks aim to play characters on board for cheaper or free costs, or with a different alternative cost, and they get to go wide and they get to spam the board, and these decks usually do fine in TCGs. They usually end up being quite top meta decks. And the only card really right now that almost qualifies this as a zoo deck is the Lady card, which allows you to play a two-cost character for free, which just allows you to, on that turn three, go another character wide, or whenever you get to play her, you get to go wide by an extra character. And I just really love this game design. Of course, in Lorcana, it's yet to know if this feels correct or not because in Lorcana, it's all about tempo. And on turn three, they'll play in a classic example, you play like a three-cost Ursula, the green one, and then they play a Pete, and we're tempoing back and we're like trying to play each other. But if you have the ability to just go two characters wide and get five ink out of your turn on a turn three, that's pretty big. That's pretty huge, and the response could be a three-cost Ursula singing like the storm twice to answer both those things. So I'm feeling it's fairly fair, but it could be the wrong direction for zoo decks to be in Lorcana. But that's a bigger discussion. That's discussion about should we include token cards and things like that. But I've always loved these decks. Every TCG I've played, I've always just really enjoyed them. Even right now in One Piece, I'm playing a Zoo Zorro, which is the Zoo deck for the character Zorro in there. And also as well in this one, it's nice that majority of the characters in this deck are animals, so that kind of goes into the zoo theme. And this deck was brought to me by Primor, who's someone in my testing group, an amazing player in Germany. Like, sort of player, if he shows you a list, like it's had the good testing gone through. He's tried everything. He's not just going to present a list after three games and go, "Wow, this deck's broken." Like he's put the work in, and yeah, it's just been performing well for me. It's kind of local environments and online testing. We got into top 10 at the on the website that we always the game we don't talk about. We got into top 10 on there. We did like a 12-game win streak with it. So yeah, it's just for me personally, I feel like it's a deck that could easily be countered if people looked at it and started trying to evaluate how they beat it. But then I don't know what that would do for their other matchup, so I don't know if they do that. And it can also defeat itself sometimes by just having slow starts. You try and maximize that out by having many one drops and two drops. So like you don't have to mulligan heavy for that curve. You should be able to find it. Having 12 two drops and how many is there? Sorry, for 8, 12, 16 one drops. And they're all fine. Sometimes you just need one thing on the board and they've all got utility and they all fit in the deck and do well. And you've got the Rhino shift line in there that's just amazing. And then you've got the lady in there, like I say, it just allows you to go one wider on those turns. And as well, as much as it helps you on the play, do these just stomping people out games, lady really shines for me on the draw because there's a decks like Ruby Sapphire even where I think on the play you always win that. Like you have to again have bricked your hand to have lost that. But on the draw sometimes you don't get the tempo you really need because they're just going to ignore you and mega ramp into a Cecil or a Shark and just beat you that way. But with this deck, you could do, play a Piglet on two, play Lady and play another Piglet, and you'll just be getting enough lore that you don't really care that the mega ramped. You should be questing out and putting them in these like checkmate positions. And there's more parts of the deck as well. You've got Vinnie in there, which we're not seeing in every Amber Steel aggro list, but for me personally, Vinnie is the way I want to go this set. Um, because if you just create these really wide boards, when you play Lady, you play Piglet, you play Lady, and they're just ignoring everything to do a mega ramp and you play Vinny at the end of that. When they play the big Sisu, Vinny actually allows you to get lore from every character that was removed from the Sisu, and then of course removes all the characters and it removes the Vinny. But you just get so much lore out of that, and that closes the gap and it puts them in this like you could have just won the game. It could be that they need to answer everything you top deck, and you play a Lawrence, and it's a very hard thing for them to answer. So yeah, it's just really, really powerful in my opinion. And I'm talking so quickly because of how much excitement I have for the deck. And I think I'd probably go through each card individually just to say why they're in there and they work really well. But Attack for Two played this in the 10K and I think went 5-2 in the end. But like I say, the deck isn't. I don't think the deck is perfect. I think it has its weak spots. It can defeat itself sometimes. You also know if you've won or lost very early on just by how quickly you got out of the gate. If you play against a Blurple and they're able to play a Bell turn one and stall all of your early questing, you probably won't win that game. And you kind of just have to take that. That's the way that aggro's always been. Your strongest part is that part at the start of the game, that turn one, two, three, and then any turn after that, your chance to win diminishes a little bit. I'm not saying if you haven't got 20 lore by turn three or turn four, you've lost the game, but if you're not in a winning spot or you're not presenting enough lore on board and enough characters on board by turn four, if you're not presenting a very powerful position, you probably have lost that game, and that's just the way that aggro goes. Instead of the way that a control deck goes, you've won the game by the end of the game, like by about 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 turns in. This deck, if you've won between turns one, two, and three, which is really interesting. But that's the way I like to play it. I like the swarm decks. I like to use all these like fun, quirky animals. Maybe in rotation when we lose cards like Cindy and Let the Storm, I can put more animals in the deck and go full zoo and play an entirely animal-based deck. But yeah, this is something I'm definitely. It's beyond considering for playing the competitive events. Like I've got Axion coming up, and I've got to do the content creator store champs again. I didn't got to. I privileged that I get to do them. So yeah, this is a deck I definitely want to bring. Also as well, it's like sometimes when a deck really feels right, because when you're losing with it, you're still having a good time, you're still having fun, and you're enjoying the experience of playing the game. So I do that. I could say versus people, it can be a very toxic experience where they just miss their two drop or whatever, and you've gone Piglet Lady into another Piglet, and you're just questing for so much, and you've maybe played a Cindy turn one that can strength or storm anything they play anyway. So yeah, it can be a little bit toxic to play against sometimes, but personally, it's just the way that card games are. There's some matchups people aren't gonna like. So yeah, just to start off with, it's an Amber Steel deck. So you start with the Cindy and the Song package, and what that really does is it allows you to protect all of your characters for a little bit longer. And she's just a great thing because she costs one. She's not always going to be your turn one. Sometimes your turn one will be a Daisy, and then your turn two will be Cindy and the Rhino, and then you've got this amazing position where you've got Daisy questing for two every turn, getting you the lore. Cindy can throw out Strength and Storm to remove anything that would threaten your board, and then you've got this Rhino shift line that you can use to kind of just keep progressing and like make this really threatening board. And then Rhino is very good because he can trade and remove anything that you don't like on the board, but also you can just turn him sideways and cash in and get two lore if not. So Rhino is really what brought this deck together for me, and he's another animal card, so I love it. And again, yeah, Daisy is the next card to mention. Yeah, I don't really have much more else to say about the song package. We all know about it. You get your Cindy's out early, singing removal, allowing everything else to kind of get on what it wants to do, quest or sing itself, or whatever. If it was playing a traditional steel song where you might want your other characters to be singing other songs, like Ariel to be singing her whole new worlds. But in this one, yeah, it's mainly to protect all your lower and cheaper characters. And then Daisy Duck is just having this ability to spam two questers very early on is great. Like there'll be some decks like Ruby Sapphire where if you open with triple Daisy, there's pretty much no way they can come back to the game. You've won that game. That's probably going to be in the books for you. It's very rare for them to come back. And even into a thing like Steel Song, they might get a Troubadour down and sing a Zeus on one of them, but that's going to be really rough for them. Of course, it has its weak spots though. Daisy always has it against foxes and crabs. They are very awkward cards for them to play, and she is uninkable. So sometimes you are kind of constricted into playing the line where you have to play the Daisy and you have to quest with it and you have to take the bad trade, but you take your two lore and you just sort of move on because you paid one ink for her. So Daisy's always just been great. There's not much more to be played against there for so many sets. Just awesome. And even you'll have turns where like you could play Doc and then you slam a Daisy down and slave another one drop down, and that might be another Daisy. Or your turn three could be a two drop and a Daisy. And even getting Daisy off Lady is never the baddest thing in the world. She's a 1/4. She's got better body than quite a lot of these characters, especially a Piglet. But and she's going to sit there questing. And it's just, yeah, just awesome. I think you keep her as a 4x. I saw Kurt's list had her as a 3x, which made more sense in that list. But here, it's just full out aggression. We want as many questers out on board as we can. And having these cheap questers means that we don't really brick as hard. Like if our turn two is play a Daisy and pass, it never feels the worst. It of course doesn't feel the best, but we've kind of established another good body that's going to quest, and we've got this uninkable card out of our hand, and we're just gonna, yeah, just keep aggroing them out. I can't really talk more about Daisy because it's just saying how good she is at questing and how cheap she is. Rhino as the one drop, he was the card that I kind of said, oh, I don't really like him. I think I would just play four big rhinos and not play the little ones. And after playing it, I'm completely like not into that way of thinking anymore. So I was completely wrong on that. I think the one drop, of course, the shift line into mirrors and other low to the ground decks. If they're going to open Daisy turn one, and you shift a Rhino on two, and you can just take out the Daisy, it takes no damage. You've got this insanely heavy body on board, and if they've played a Smee or whatever, they can't even take it out. So just awesome, and that's another weak point for Daisy. She's pretty bad against other Rhino decks as well, because he just cleans them up so easily, and he's most likely been played on for a shift value. But yeah, he's just so good. And again, like if you get that turn two where you play two one drops, or turn three where you play a two drop and a one drop, it's a pretty bad hit off Lady, I'd say. But because with Lady, you kind of just want to progress more lore characters on the board, ones that have two questing power. But he's just the shift line so powerful, and the actual one drop ability. Now, before I was playing with Calhoun, I did cut Calhoun for Sven the reindeer, but I still think his ability is pretty good here. If you're going into a turn, say, where you've quested with a piglet and your opponent has like a genie on board or anything that has two strength, you can play this to minus that. And that would just mean it's very awkward now for them to answer your piglet. Whereas before they had just an easy, hit it with the genie, take it out, and then they might use Bell to move the damage around. But or if it's Ruby Amethyst, they just hit it with the genie. Now they've got to find the crab or find an Elsa, and even still, it's just more awkward things they've got to do. So he can make a board very awkward. Um, you can even minus like say if they had like something like a Mulan to hit into your Smee because your Smee is also quested and he has one damage on him. You can minus there, so now they can't do that trade, and he's either going to get to quest again, and then the Mulan will run in, or they're going to have to find some awkward let the storm answer for it, where maybe they don't have a singer set up. So, even with Chernobog as well, that's just another good example where you can minus it down to one, so it's a 1-1, and your Smee is a 3-2, and it just means that because we're not trying to keep these characters alive on board forever, they won't do that. They won't stick forever. Your Smee is not going to stay. But if your Smee quests for 4, maybe even 6, that's just huge for you. That's just really great. That's really great value. Your 2 quest has got you a bunch of lore there, and he's also maybe traded with something when they've finally been able to run it into it, or he's took a card to be removed. So the Rhino 1-drop is just actually quite an astounding card. The only issue is, of course, you're not going to be putting lore on the board, but sometimes he just sets up to mean the Piglet can quest for 6, or your Smee can quest for 4 or 6. So yeah, it's kind of not underestimating his ability. Sometimes he might look like the card you want to ink in your hand, but I would say definitely like look at your hand and evaluate it and go, hang on, I can get a bit more life out of my Piglet if it gets to survive for one more turn or whatever. And then you've got Mulan. There is no Rapunzels in this list, which is still, I guess, like on the back of my mind saying, does this need Rapunzels? Of course, classically, Amber decks always just play Rapunzel. She's really good, really great value for what you get. You get a 1/5, and she could heal up to 3 and draw you 3 cards, and then you've got this huge quester on board. But for this deck, it's more about, we're only capping out at 3 or 4 ink majority of the time, and we're swarming the board, and then we're playing dock. And for that, we never really get to a point where we can play Rapunzel, and if we do play Rapunzel, it's going to be also in the other low to the ground matchup, so Chernodogs or the Mirror. It feels very tempo slow to play a 1/5. Into like the rest of Lorcana history before this set, it's always felt great to play Rapunzel. But for me personally, recently, it's not felt great to play Rapunzel. And if I'm able to play Doc and my hand is full of like characters that cost more than 2 or 3, it just kind of feels like, if I dock and I get a Rapunzel and a Rhino, I kind of sometimes feel like I've lost the game because I'm not able to just spam more cards, or next turn I'm only going to be playing 1 card a turn. So She didn't feel that great in the end, and she's sort of been cut. It does mean you have to lean more into this aggressive play style and play more cheap questers, but that's fine with me. That's kind of the play style I want to play. And what Mulan allows me to do is clean up the hand into some matchups. Ruby Sapphire is the main one. Let the Storms can be fairly useless cards. So you kind of want to draw a card, discard a card, and then get closer to your next dock, or just clean up the hand a bit. Maybe you already needed an Inkable in your hand. It's a more justified one drop. She's got utility, like I say. There's going to be matchups where you don't need the Let the Storm. There could even be a matchup where you don't have a singer for Let the Storm, and by the time you have one set up, it's going to be too late. So you might as well just dump it and drop it and draw that next card to get you just better value, and clean your hand up is mainly what you're doing. Um, I think it could also allow you to try out cards like Desperate Plan, which is definitely worth testing and trying in this list if I can find the room for it. Because the unink count is never really felt that overwhelming. But just drawing songs when you don't really need them, especially versus Ruby Sapphire, is just can sometimes be the reason why you lost. If you played Doc and you draw into two Let the Storms, that's horrible. But if you drew into a Let the Storm and a Mulan, and then you've got like one ink left over on that turn, you just play the Mulan, clean up the hand. Next turn, you could double spam some two questers or something. So she's felt very fine in this. She's felt very good. Of course, she's not straight replacement for Rapunzel. That was where the swap was made, Rapunzel for Mulan. But I wouldn't say that's like the swap to make. And I've generally thought about swapping her out for Simba just because it meant I had more animals in the deck. But I think that's incorrect because Mulan challenging opponent's Smees is just too good. It's too good value. Piglets as well. It's too powerful. Penny's in there because the ability she gives you healing ability, which is awesome, and she can mean that the Smee won't take one damage. And again, you can do the same thing that I mentioned with the Rhino plays, where you could make it so Piglet has one resist, so their answer to him can't be an Elsa or a Genie. It now needs to be other things. They need to use their crabs again. A lot of the Blurple lists have actually even cut crab, so it's getting even more awkward. They can't even maths it up with like throw. This is even better because they can't even maths it up by throw a Tipo in, then use the Genie to kill it. It would have to be, they have to find 3 damage to remove it, which just amazing. Keep your Smear alive for longer. You could even protect the Cindy for another turn. You could protect your Vinny so it keeps questing for more. You could maybe even protect Rhino and give him an extra resist so he could take out a Smee and not pop his resist bubble. So there's just loads of cool plays you can do with her. She's a card I feel like I could keep giving you examples of lines, but eventually you're just going to find out that in every scenario it's like, could Penny help here? She can. I'm going to play her on the board. And then she's a 2-quester, so that's pretty great. She's probably going to be removed very early on, but she gives you value on play and she gets you fight for the board a bit more. So just awesome for that. Just she's never really a bad thing to hit off the lady. So say if you've done this line of play Piglet on 2, play lady on 3, protected your Piglet full quested, and they've got like a Chernobog on the board, that's not going to take it out. You'll find loads of little interesting things, or that Let the Storm Rage on is coming. You could put the resist onto something just to protect it for that. So just a really awesome card. I have tried swapping her out for Lilo because I felt into the red matchups. I needed a little bit more help, but since going to Vinny and people still trying to use Big Sisu, I haven't felt like I've needed Nilo that much. And into a lot of other decks where non-red decks like Lilo is pretty much useless because they win the board and then you're going to recycle every turn. She just gets removed. So we've been using Penny instead, but I think Lilo, if you ever find room and find a card that's underperforming, Lilo will sweep back in. For Piglets, I had to talk to, I chose to talk to a player called Boomy, who's like top card every DLC he's played. He plays Boomy Steel Song, amazing player, a lovely friend. And he just kind of told me the power of Piglet. If you get him on the board, and they have to find an answer for it, and sometimes you can calculate they don't have an answer, and maybe their only answer is hardcast Brawl, or they have to hardcast Brawl, is use Brawl, or hardcast Let the Storm Rage on, and that's just a massive tempo swing. So you've got a bit of value out of that, even though you didn't get to quest with a Piglet. Later on in the game, you can just win off a Piglet, just being a huge threat on the board and jumping you through lore. And yeah, it's kind of like putting it on the board and saying, do you have an answer for it? No, okay, here's 3 lore then. And then if you have Cinderellas, you can protect them for a bit longer by taking out their stuff and singing removal. You can use Penny and Rhino to protect them even longer. And playing 4 of them has just felt great. You can get, if they miss a little bit of tempo, and you can just jump in and, say Ruby Amethyst is not completely uncommon for them to miss turn 1 and 2. If they miss turn 1 and 2, you just play Piglet, play a lady, play another Piglet for free. That's amazing. Playing Piglet for free off lady is just so amazing. You've gone too wide, they're going to have to scramble for answers for it, and they probably will find the answers, but they will have to find a way to respond to it, and by that point you might just place me and a dock on the next turn and just go even wider and draw more cards. There are some decks like Blurple and Green Purple, I guess, as well, besides like a kit bounce. They can't really do anything if you play it on curve in those earlier turns. Later on, of course, you have to think about things like Elsa, but again, you can use Piglet and Rhino, Penny and Rhino to your advantage. So yeah, it's just playing that as a 4x, even on the draw. Sometimes I've been behind on lore and they've gone for like spam quested Daisy line, and I've gone Cindy, Piglet, Lady Piglet, or Cindy, Smee, Lady Piglet, whatever, just gone wider, sing some removal, quested, and now I'm ahead, and now I'm the aggressor, and they have to answer me. So Piglet as a 4x is felt amazing. Doc and Smee, I want to move over these very quickly because it's a steel deck that's an aggressive deck. You play Smee, that's just the rules. And Doc as well has always been the card draw. Unlike Kiwi, so if you're watching, most of my stuff from Kiwi, this style of deck is a deck where you would want to keep Doc in the mulligan. And if you're going to keep in the mulligan, it might mean you don't want to as aggressively mulligan for other cards because you don't want to end up getting two Docs. But if you do, again, you can come back to Mulan, who's able to clean the hand up a bit, and you get some more value out of the hand rather than having to hard play two Docs. It's rare that I ever play two Docs on the board because I've got two, and it's just very good. So Doc is always in there for these sort of style of decks, and I've really liked the Doc aggro decks, to be honest with you. They've kind of been my home for a little bit, and yeah, it does play a little bit better than Kiwi, whereas in Kiwi you're playing it just to give you an essence of draw power and like a way to keep the engine going, because you usually play the Doc and then you'll draw into like some 5-drops that you're going to slam the next turn, whereas here you want to maybe do Smee and a Doc, or Doc then find a Smee and play it, and just keep being aggressive that way. So it's a fairly different mulligan, but I've also found the mulligan very fair in this deck, as it's so dense on like 1-drops and 2-drops, and so dense on questers. If your hand looked good enough to play, majority of the time you can keep it. If it's the mirror and you need to get a Rhino, or you need to get, say, a Cindy singing like the storm, you can do that as well. But like majority of the time, you can just keep. Like I've full kept so much with this list, to be honest with you. We've got to Lady as well. Lady is like the centerpiece of the deck, in my opinion. Rhino is a powerhouse. It's very easy and to see and justifiable to see how powerful that card is. I don't think it needs explaining any further. But Lady allowing you to just do that 3 wide is the Chernodogs can do it, but I just don't feel like they do it as well as we do. Being able to put it as Smee, and even playing the Doc for free sometimes, just to get you get that, because playing Doc never feels great because you're putting on 1/3 on board, you draw 2 cards, that's great. But if you're putting a 2/2 3 cost that can also sing stuff if you really need it to, and then drawing some cards, it's just amazing as well. So Lady is generally like a card that, again, I underplayed. I think it has loads of weak spots. Like if you were to play on the draw Lady into an Ursa 3 cost and they double singlet the storm, that feels horrible. But in pretty much all other scenarios, it feels an amazing card to play. It's very much the card I like playing in card games. Cards that say play another character for free. So I really love it. It kind of brings the whole deck together, and it's probably why I'm sticking with it. Even when I'm losing and I'm like not doing that well, it's like I haven't been underperforming with this deck, but I can imagine even at the bottom tables, if I'm playing Lady and play a Smee for free, I'm still going to have a good time. So yeah, just that ability on the draw is where it really shines, because on the play you're just kind of over winning. Like you're win mooring when you play it on the play. I don't think that's a wrong play to make, because you just, as an aggro deck, you really want to lock in that you've won the game. So if you play it and play your Smee or Piglet for free, but on the draw, being able to tempo swing by going, haha, I've played 2 characters this turn, and they are, I've spent 5 ink worth of stuff, and that's just really awesome. People as well tend to kill Lady because she can be a singer. Majority of the time, you want to cash in that 2 lore, but she can also be set up to sing strength, and then your Smee or your Piglet or the other character that you played for free gets the quest as well. So yeah, just amazing card. Really brought this aggressive style, and just the way on the draw, you can dump your hand even more. So when you play Doc, your hand's even emptier. It's just awesome. So amazing card, quite busted, and I'm pretty sure it's upsetting a lot of people who don't play Amber cards. It was when I was playing Kiwi into it. Lawrence is in there mainly for the Ruby matchups that are still lingering around, and even like Blurple and stuff like that. Sometimes as well, he's just a good body to play on three. I think he probably could be cut if you really wanted him to, and you wanted to play like more two drops. If you wanted to play Lilo's in there, I think he's fine for that. But overall, he's just always been like a good statted character. I think he'd look a lot better in a Rapunzel list, but in here he still doesn't underperform. He does very, very well. So yeah, I mean, majority of the time when you play him, you're going to find yourself inking because you're going to want to be playing Pete on three or Lady is most optimal. But Lawrence still was never bad. And in those later turns where you play against Ruby Amethyst and or Ruby Sapphire, and you know they've got like a what's it called, like Sisu in hand, you can play a Lawrence down, and you know it just makes an awkward spot for them because you're going to probably get that law cashed in. So yeah, he sort of stays around. He has dropped to a 3 count, but still an amazing character. You rarely use him for trades. It's more of you quest with him against non-steel decks, and then they have to run a thing in and it loses. Like I've seen people trade like a Mystic Bell into it just because they had to get it off the board and they didn't really have any of the better answers for it. So awesome card. Pete, yeah, you need Pete in here. Like I say, I keep mentioning the Ursa double singing like the Storm or double singing strength. If they do that, you tend to just lose that matchup. I think Green Steel could probably be its worst matchup. You know, when Green Steel is playing optimally and they get to do an actual curve and they don't just brick. So you need Pete's in there. You need Pete's for Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst. Pete is all round good. Pete is life. Pete is amazing. So we have to keep him in there as a 4x. Play the busted cards. I'm pretty sure any Steel player knows why Pete is good. So we're just going to skip over him to mention the last two cards. I'll mention Sven first before I mention Vinny, because Vinny will probably have the largest talking points on it. Sven is the one I'm trying out. A lot of people are still on Calhoun's or Lilo's or just anything else, or just filtering out the deck a bit more. Maybe playing 4 Vinnies and 4 Lawrences. But I've been trying Sven out. Sven can do things like restand the Piglet, and then again, you're working with that synergy of Rhino and Penny to just give Piglet a lot more life. Or you can restand the Smee so it doesn't take its damage. You can restand anything really. If you want to have Vinny sing and then restand him to protect him, you can do that as well. So overall, he's just felt very clean, and he's felt the kind of card I wanted in the deck. I don't want him to be overwhelming, so I think a 2 count is fine. But yeah, it's because you're playing with such a small amount of cards. Like on average, you could probably predict that the average amount of cards that you see in the deck is about 15 cards. You see your 7 to begin with, and then you may draw a little bit with the docks, but on average, you're only going to see like the top 15 cards of your deck. Maybe let's go further and put a buffer on that and say top 16, top 20 cards in your deck. So giving those cards extra life is great. Sven is a card that can do that. It can restand things so they don't get easily removed. Next turn they're going to run something in with rush, you can restand it. And it could also force them to use cards that they didn't want to use, like maybe hard cast some removals like Brawls and Let the Storm, or Strength if they didn't have answers for it. Maybe having to use their Elsa when they didn't really want to use their Elsa. It's just it does so much, and it was also a 2-quester from that point out with a decent body, and it can also sing your removal if required. So overall, he's felt very good. He's still very much in the testing realm for me, though. So if I brought this to Axion, there's a very likely chance that Sven isn't going to make it to the final cut. But for me personally, it's another animal card as well. That was another selling point for me. But he's been very good in other aggressive amber decks, so I think he has a place here. So Vinny is the final card that maybe you should have talked about at the start, because we did talk about moments with him of Sisu, but he is just really quite the powerhouse. He performs so many sort of checkmates in the game where you can full quest and then you play a Vinny, and their opponent, they may have the answer for your characters, but they would also need an answer for Vinny first. Otherwise, you're going to get all this lore from your characters being removed, and then from that point out, you just play characters, and if they still haven't answered your Vinny, it's just going to keep getting you more lore. And as I say, you can sing removal from him. He's a dedicated singer like Cindy is, because he's only a 1-quester. Your Cindy or your Pete's and Vinny are like all your kind of characters that can sing. And then you're going to use cards like Sven, Rhino, and Penny to protect them, so they can freely sing whilst everything else quests. Because as I've mentioned, Lawrence or Lady can sing, but you don't really want them to be singing. You don't really want Rhino to be singing either. You will want to be trading or questing, and that's kind of his whole deal. But these 1-questers are in the deck because they're just very good at just throwing a song out there, and you can protect them further on. And being a 1/4 is, again, it's just an awkward number for a lot of steel decks. And if you play it against a red deck, they might have a Brawl in hand, they might have a little Sisu in hand, but it's very unlikely they would want to play it on a 1/4 that has one law in it. But the other thing is if they play it on your Daisy, they remove it, you get one law, and Daisy may have quested, so that's making Daisy a 3 quester now because you've gained law and she's been removed, and that's fine. So he can actually extend the ability for all of your characters to be an extra 1 quester. He can make a Smee into a 3 quester. He can make Daisy into a 3 quester, Cindy into a 2 quester. If you understand what I'm trying to say there, you're getting more value out of these cards that are very cheap. And it goes back to my original point of you're probably only going to be seeing the top 15 to top 20, top 16, top 17, let's say, just on average. Then cards your deck. So getting as much value out of those cards as you can. Getting one extra law can be very much making the difference. And if you're able to do 1-drop, double 2-drop, lady into another 2-drop, and then play a Vinnie and play a Doc, you're able to get into this point where you've got so many characters on board, they have to all be answered. And if they spend a turn to play Elsa, exert Vinnie, run things in, or they have to play Brawl on Vinnie or Strength on Vinnie, it's never always the worst spot as well because it's protecting your other characters. So he's got 2 things he does in the game where he's either going to be getting you a bunch of law or he's going to be a lightning rod and protect all of your other cheap questers. So just an amazing card all around. Again, he can be a brick. That's why he's only sat at 3x, but you've got cards like Mulan to keep it clean. So overall, the deck is just it plays a very aggressive game plan, and it does a very good job of it. Of course it can fall flat on itself. You can still brick on it. That's Mulans are there to prove that the deck can be bricked because it needs cards to clean up the bricks. You can be not fast out of the gate. You could lose to another aggressive deck on the draw. So it has a lot of weak spots. But for me personally, I just really love this kind of deck, and I really love the game style of it. So I'm going to keep playing it, I think. And if anyone wants to try it out, please do tell me how you get on.